بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي وكفى والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, respected listeners. Alhamdulillah, it's the 13th session of the reading of this wonderful book, Imdad al-Suluk, which is a translation by Hazrat Mawlana Rashid Ahmad rahmatullah alayh of Kutub al-Irshad, Mawlana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi rahmatullah alayh's book, Irshad al-Muluk, which in itself was translated into Farsi from the Arabic Risala Makkiyah by Sheikh Qutbuddin Dimashqi. I have the Urdu in front of me, which I'm inshallah reading and continuing on. Alhamdulillah, the last lesson we completed the second section, and now we're on to the third section, or the third chapter, which is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4 subheadings. So inshallah I'm going to begin reading the second chapter on this, inshallah. So Hazrat Gangohi rahmatullah alayhi, he writes Tariq al-Suluk under the subheading Tariq al-Suluk, the way of tasawwuf. He writes, जब तालिब सादिक को सुलूक का शौक पैदा हो, that when the truthful, sincere seeker is eager to traverse the path, तो सबसे पहले उसको ऐसा शेख तलाश करना चाहिए. Then first of all you find such a sheikh जिसके सिफात ऊपर बयान किए गए हैं, whose qualities and attributes have been mentioned above, ताकि वो उसके मुनासिब हाल ज़िक्र की इसको तालीम दे, so that he may advise him of some dhikr, or teach him some dhikr according to suitable to his situation. इसके बाद उस शेख के हुक्म के मुवाफिक उस ज़िक्र पर पाबंदी करनी चाहिए. Thereafter, according to the command of this sheikh, he should be diligent in completing the dhikr that's been given to him. So what the sheikh is saying here is very simple, that when a person is ready to do, when the sincere seeker is ready to do suluk, he should find the sheikh, as has been mentioned in the previous section. The qualities of the sheikh should be such, which has been mentioned in the previous lesson. And after that, the sheikh will then, according to that's suitable to his situation, teach him some dhikr. And then this individual, what's responsible for him is, he's responsible to complete the dhikr diligently on a daily basis, as has been instructed by his sheikh. And this is extremely important. Why? I'll tell you why in a few seconds. Let me just complete the sentence. यहाँ तक कि ज़िक्र की हरारत उसके वजूद पर हावी हो जाए, until the heat or the warmth of the dhikr उसके वजूद पर हावी हो जाए, it takes control and it firmly establishes itself over the individual, और ये दूसरों को तलकीन करने का अहल और खिरका तसव्वुफ हासिल करने के लायक हक़ ताला के फजल से सूफ़ी बन जावे. And this continues to such an extent, he becomes so absorbed in the dhikr and the hararat of the dhikr, the warmth of the dhikr takes him over to such an extent that he becomes capable of advising and teaching others, and also donning the mantle of tasawwuf, any khilafat if that's suitable for him, or Allah Ta'ala ke fadl se, and through the kindness and generosity of the magnanimity of Allah Almighty, he becomes a Sufi himself. Now, just moving back a little bit, the pabandi on dhikr, the muwadhabat on dhikr, the diligent fulfilling of the dhikr is extremely important. Shaykh al-Hadith Mawlana Muhammad Zakaria Kandalawi rahmatullah alayhi used to say कि ज़िक्र की पाबंदी मामूलात की पाबंदी तरक्की का ज़ीना है. That the beauty of advancing in suluk and in purifying the heart and then acquiring the positive traits is by diligently fulfilling one's ma'mulat, absolutely. Not sleeping, not even eating until one's actually fulfilled one's ma'mulat. This is absolutely important. And in order to advance, it's very important that one continues with the dhikr continuously, day in and day out. ensure that all aspects of whatever the Shaykh has instructed is completed. This is the way to advance, and without this a person cannot advance. And that's what the Shaykh is saying here. And that once he becomes absorbed in the zikr, and once he increases his zikr, and the kayfiyat and the kamiyat, the amount and the kayfiyat and the way he does his zikr, he continues with it, then the heat and the warmth of the zikr takes over his entire body, to an extent that he becomes absorbed in the zikr and he becomes a complete dhakir. He's remembering Allah Almighty all the time. Bas mubtadi ke liye munasib hai. And that's a different, that's something that a person then will discuss with his own sheikh and advance as he moves forward. Bas mubtadi ke liye munasib hai. Hence, it's appropriate for the beginner कि सबसे अहम जिक्र यानी नफ़ी इस्बात को बिल जहर या बिस्सिर जिस तरह भी शेख ने बतलाया है हमेशा इस तरीक़े से किया करे. It's appropriate and it's suitable for the murid that the most important dhikr, in other words the nafi and the ithbat. What he means by nafi and ithbat is the negation and the affirmation, which means and refers to la ilaha illallah. Ko bil jahr ya bisir, to make the dhikr of the kalima la ilaha illallah bil jahr ya bisir, loudly in an audible voice or quietly, jis tarah bhi Shaykh ne batlaya, in the manner that's been instructed by the Shaykh according to his tariq. Hamesha is tariq se kiya kare, and he should always complete this zikr in this way कि la ilaha se har khair और shar की nafi का ध्यान करे. That when saying the la ilaha, there is no one worthy of worship. When he says the Arabic la ilaha, then he should focus his mind that every single thing, khair or shar, good and bad, everything, he has negated everything. There's nothing there except for Allah. Or illallah se haq ta'ala ki dhaat pak ba ithbat kare. And that when he says illallah, that on his heart he's affirming affirming Allah Almighty. He's establishing Allah Almighty. कि उसका आदम महल है. That without Allah Almighty, it's impossible. There's no possibility of anything being in place except for with Allah. और ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह कहते वक्त शेख का ध्यान दिल में लाए, उसकी रूह को अपने अंदर समझे. And when he says la ilaha illallah, he should bring should think of his sheikh at the same time. उसकी रूह को अपने अंदर समझे and feel that the sheikh is with him. और अगर जिक्र और खलवत के असना में कोई चीज़ उस पर ज़ाहिर हो. So this is the tariq of la ilaha illallah and the zikr. You know, within our Chishti tariqah, we do it bil jahr. There's a movement of the head in itself, and the sheikh will instruct the murid in how to do the zikr. This is explained here as well by Hazrat Gangohi rahmatullah alayh. And at the same time he says, agar zikr or khalwat ke asna, whilst doing the dhikr and whilst sitting in solitude, koi cheez us par zahir ho, if something was to appear to him. You know, sometimes when a person focuses on his nafs, he breaks the nafs, he completes a dhikr, he might, things that are contrary to the norm, abnormal, things that aren't normal, he might see something, kashf, or he might hear something, or he might see some lights or anything of this sort. Bali buri surte, he might see something, ya chamakdar anwar, he sees some lights, ya rang aaye, gunagu nazar aave, to unki taraf hargiz tawajjuh na kare. Then this person should not focus on these things. These are just things that occur whilst one is traversing the path. Don't focus on this at all. और यकीन के साथ जाने रहे कि नूर हकीकी सूरत शक्ल और जिहत सिमत और हद तहय्युज से पाक है. And he should feel very confident, and he should believe from the depth of his heart that the light of Allah Almighty doesn't have any surat, it doesn't have a form or a shakal, a form or jihad, it doesn't have a width or a breadth, or it doesn't have a direction, simat or had or tahayyus se paak, it's pure from all of these things. Don't focus on this. These things happen, just ignore that. These are just things that occur whilst one traverses the path of tasawwuf. बस ये अनवार वगैरह जो कुछ भी नज़र आ रहे ख्यालात की किस्म से होंगे, Hence, any of these lights or any of this type of stuff, etc., were to appear to a person whilst he's traversing the path during the dhikr, sitting in khalwat, etc. These are just thoughts that can appear to a person, jo fauran mit jayenge, which can easily annihilate and be removed and destroyed and finish. Or zahir hai ke napaidar shay dil lagane ke qabil nahi hai, and because they can easily emit themselves and disappear, it's very clear that that which isn't constant, that which is not eternal, is not something that one should focus one's heart on, but one should really focus on Allah Almighty throughout the zikr. चुनांचे सैयदुना हज़रत खलीलुल्लाह अलैहिस्सलाम ने जब सितारों को देखा गुरूब हो गए तो फरमाया कि गुम हो जाने वालों को मैं नहीं पसंद करता क्योंकि वो खुदा बनने के काबिल नहीं है. Therefore, Sayyiduna Ibrahim alayhi is mentioned in the Quran, that when he saw the stars and he saw that they when the sun came out they became faded and they disappeared, then he said that which fades, I don't want, isn't worthy of being a deity in my eyes. So likewise, they use this verse of the Quran the Shaykh uses the verse of the Quran to draw a simile, that in the same way that when a person does dhikr, if anything that's khawarikul adat, something that's contrary to the norm, to appear to a person, gosh, he might hear something, he might see something, some lights appear, lots of things can happen. Starts seeing dreams as well, let's move it out of the dhikr, but when this person starts off in the path of tasawwuf, he starts seeing lots of dreams, things happen, then don't focus on any of this, because this is unnecessary. This is something that's only temporary. It happens and it goes away. Don't focus on what's temporary, focus on what's eternal. What's eternal is Allah Almighty. Then after, the next section is a very interesting section, and I read this very carefully before, and I'll tell you what this one is. So Noor Zulmat ke 70,000 parde, that is 60,000 or 70,000 veils of darkness and light. And he says that जानना चाहिए, it should be known कि जो चीज़ें नज़र आती है, that whatever a person sees, उन सब की हकीकत आलम माना में मौजूद है, that the reality of this is found in the आलम माना. और ये जो आलम मिसाल में रोशन होता है, उन्हें हकीकतों का ज़िल और परतों है. And he says that so the alam mana is the permanent eternal world, the hereafter. He says that whatever a person sees when doing dhikr, and he says that it goes into Sufi metaphysics, alam mana, alam mithal. So the alam mana is the permanent eternal world of the hereafter. Alam mithal is located between the material world and the present world, or alamul jism. But anyway, this is all real Sufi metaphysics, and he goes into some of this discussion. He says that whatever a person sees whilst doing dhikr in the alamul mithal is actually a reflection of what's in the alamul ma'na. And to be honest with you, and he says that don't focus on this at all. Taham unse manus hona na chahiye. A person shouldn't focus on any of this kushuf or anything that's khawarik aada. Ignore it completely. Focus on Allah Almighty. Then he mentions after this, and he mentions the 70,000 veils and removing of the 70,000 veils, and that a person when he starts traversing the path, the various lataif or the subtleties within an individual are activated, and then one by one, and he describes all of this. And to me, when I read this, and I can see that it's been taken from some of the writings of Sheikh Najmuddin Kubra, I think he was a Sufi of the 13th century, who in some of his writings has described the entire path that a person goes into, and the entire path of tasawwuf. And this was written by Sheikh Qutbuddin Dimashqi rahmatullah alayhi, Gangohi rahmatullah alayhi. He translated it into Farsi, and then it was translated into Urdu, so it's remained within that. But there's a footnote here regarding the path and regarding this actual journey itself and what's been mentioned here. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to translate all of this. I'm not going to read it all as well, because all of this is something that our Mashaykh rahimullah, they acknowledge that it existed inside the books. They acknowledge that the path itself, different Mashaykh have described it in different things, but they always advise the murids, Don't focus on what the path is. Don't focus on all the veils and what moving from one station to another and how a person moves and how the veils and how the veils remove, etc. Don't focus on any of this, but rather focus on your ma'mulat and building a connection with the Shaykh and fulfilling your ma'mulat and your dhikr as best as possible. And there's a footnote here written by Mawlana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, who summarizes all of this. And I thought that instead of reading the Urdu here and about the different veils, etc., because it's not necessary at this stage, I think it's probably more important for me to read the footnote and translate the footnote, which provides proper context to this, inshallah. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to call it a day, inshallah. So, Mawlana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi Rahmatullah Alayhi, who was the murid, Khalifa of Mawlana Khalil Ahmad Saharanpuri, murid of Hazrat Gangohi Rahmatullah Alayhi. He didn't receive Khilafat from Hazrat Gangohi, but he received Khilafat from one of his foremost Khulafa, Mawlana Khalil Ahmad Saharanpuri Rahmatullah Alayhi. And he was also the biographer of Hazrat Gangohi Rahmatullah Alayhi. He wrote Tazkirat al-Rashid, and thereafter he also wrote another biography of Mawlana Khalil Ahmad Saharanpuri Rahmatullah Alayhi, known as Tazkiratul Khalil. Anyway, in this footnote he mentions मशाइख के मजाक मुख्तलिफ और तरीक़ा तालीम जुदा जुदा है, that the temperament of the mashayikh is different and the way they teach tasawwuf is also very very different, individual. कोई सुलूक को तफसील के साथ तय कराता है. Some of them allow the murids to traverse the path of tasawwuf in great detail. Koi ijmal se. Some of them, however, they don't do it in a detailed way, but they do it in a collective way. Ijmal, the opposite of detail. Koi lataif ki sair ke saath. Some of them, now the lataif. So in some of the tariqas, there's a thing called the lataif. Some of the tariqas have 5, some have 6 in the Kubrawi, and it seems that Sheikh Qutbuddin Dimashqi has actually, when he described the lataif, he seems to have taken the Kubrawi description. There's actually 7. So, and according to some of the tariqas, the lataif are also activated through the duration of the tasawwuf. Or koi bidun uske. So he says that some of them focus on the lataif and some of them do not do this. फिर सेर लताइफ में भी मुख्तलिफ तरीक़े हैं. And then he says that in traversing the lataif there's also different ways, जिसका जैसा मिजाक हो. And the sheikhs do this according to their own temperament, according to their way, according to the mashayikh. उसने वही तरीक़ पसंद किया, जिसका जैसा मजाक हो उसने वही तरीक़ पसंद किया. That whoever's temperament is such, they've adopted a certain way. पर्दाहाए मज़कूरा व अनवार लताइफ वगैरह जो मुसन्निफ़ रहमतुल्लाह ने बयान फरमाए हैं, अगर एक एक करके तय किया जाए. Now he says that the veils that have been mentioned of light, veils that have been mentioned, the lights, the lataif has been mentioned by the author, referring to Mawlana Sheikh Qutbuddin Dimashqi rahmatullah alayh. If a person was to move from one to another 70,000 veils, तो 50,000 बरस भी काफ़ी न होंगे, then perhaps 50,000 years might not even be enough. इसी वजह से हक़ ताला ने हर शेख को जुदा तर्ज अता फरमाया है. Then he says that it's because of this that each sheikh has been given a different way of traversing or allowing the murids to traverse the path. La raib, without doubt. Mashayikh ke jumla turuq maqbool hai. All of the ways of the mashayikh are accepted in the eyes of Allah Almighty. However, Qutub al-Aqtab Sheikh Abdul Quddus Gangohi rahmatullah ke turuq sabse zyada qareeb tar hai. He says, however, the way of Sheikh Abdul Quddus Gangohi rahmatullah. So within our Chishti Sabri Imdadi tariqa, a few generations up, there's a sheikh who was actually an ancestor of Mawlana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi rahmatullah alayh, known as Sheikh Abdul Quddus Gangohi rahmatullah alayh. So he says that the out of all of these paths which are accepted, the path of Sheikh Abdul Quddus Gangohi Rahmatullah alayh is the most closest. That's his opinion, and that's what the Hazrat Mawlana Ashiq Ilahi Sahib Rahmatullah alayh is mentioning. और जिस तरह आपकी ज़ात मुस्तजमअ सिफ़ात को हक़ ताला ने इम्तियाज़ बख्शा, इसी तरह आपका तरीक़ सुलूक भी दूसरे तरीक़ से मुमताज़ बनाया था. And he says that in the way that Allah Almighty had made the individual of Sheikh Abdul Quddus to be one that gathered many different qualities, Allah Almighty had also given it some distinction, that his way is also very distinct. आपके बाद कुद्दूसी गिरोह में अगरचे मुख्तलिफ वज़ा पैदा हो गई. He says that later on, as the years passed on, and Sheikh Abdul Quddus Gangohi Rahmatullah alayhi, he was actually a contemporary of the father of Mujaddid al-Fithani Rahmatullah alayhi, Sheikh Abdul Ahad. In fact, Sheikh Abdul Ahad, I think he wanted to get bait to him, but he wasn't able to. But he did meet him, and then in the end he got bait to his son. He says that आपके बाद कुद्दूसी गुरोह में, now in the tariq of Sheikh Abdul Quddus Gangohi Rahmatullah alayhi, there's different styles and styles that came about later on, मगर असल सब की एक ही है. However, the fundamentals is all the same, on this is all one. इन अवदाय मुख्तलिफा में भी इस तरीक़ा को जो मुजद्दिद ज़माना कुतुब आलम हज़रत मौलाना रशीद अहमद साहब क़ुद्दस को अता हुआ है, एक ख़ास इम्तियाज़ है. And he says that in these different flavors and approaches, the way that was adopted by Mawlana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi Rahmatullah alayhi, or he was given, and he describes him as a reformer or a reviver of his era. He says that the way of Hazrat Gangohi Rahmatullah alayhi also has a special distinction, जिससे माहिरीन फ़न ही खूब वाकिफ़ है, which those who are experts in the way of tasawwuf and suluk are very aware. जिसका जी चाहे कुतुब सुलूक का मुताला करे और अल्लाह जिसको चाहता है राय मुस्तकीम की हिदायत फरमा देता है. And he says that whoever wants to read about this, then they can read this in the books of tasawwuf, and Allah is the one who guides to the straight path. Anyway, then he continues and says, इसमें शक नहीं कि सालिक और मतलूब के दरमियान ये पर्दे हाइल है. That between the salik, between the person, the murid, between the person traversing the path of tasawwuf, and matlub, yani Allah Almighty, between him and reaching Allah Almighty, there are veils that come in between them. जो मुसन्निफ ने जिक्र किया है, so पर्दे हाइल है. So these veils are there as mentioned by the मुसन्निफ, by the author, मगर जब सालिक जज्बा इलाही से खिंच जाता है. However, when the salik, he starts in the path of Allah and he starts striving, if Allah Almighty was to bring him towards him, तो बिजली की कूदने की तरह ज़रा देर में सबको अबूर कर जाता है. Then in the way that lightning strikes and the way the speed of lightning, yeah, he can reach Allah Almighty very quickly. बस किसी को हरासा और मायूस न होना चाहिए. And hence he says that reading about these veils, people shouldn't become worried or shouldn't become anxious कि इस कदर हिजाबात किस तरह से तय कर सकूँगा. How shall one traverse and pass all of these different veils, or so many veils. So basically, I mean, it's very important. This bahas is quite important in the sense that many of the mashayikh have written about the different veils, and I've met people who've been involved in tasawwuf, and their complete focus is on understanding what the path actually looks like, or understanding how many veils there are, what the stations are, what the maqamat is, how they're moving from one to another, what the colors are, what the flavors are, all types of things. But in our mashayikh of Deoband and those affiliated to the tariq of Hazrat Gangohi Rahmatullah alayhi, Hazrat Thanvi Rahmatullah alayhi, we generally say don't focus on these things. Do not completely focus on it. Just stay अपने मामूलात में लगे रहे. तरक्की का मामूलात की पाबंदी तरक्की का ज़ीना है. Focus on your मामूलात. Focus on building your relationship with your sheikh. Ensure and nurture that relationship. Fulfill the maamulat and increase the maamulat as you go along with the instructions of your sheikh. Make sure today is better than yesterday, and tomorrow is better than today. And keep focusing on all of these things. And in terms of these Sufi metaphysics about the different alams and then the different veils and what the veils look like and how one moves from one to another. This is not important. And in our tariq, in our particular tariq, the lataif is also something that we don't really focus on. We just focus on doing the ma'mulat and bringing the hal, inshallah. So that's what you take away from today's lesson. I hope that's been it is quite deep, it's quite interesting, but I think I've really clarified this here. If there's anything else anyone wants to ask, feel free to ask, and inshallah we'll carry on tomorrow, next week. And after that, there's some practical advice that the Sheikh provides, which inshallah will help us all along. But this is just a bit of a very technical discussion here, which I just wanted to cover with people. We've covered it, alhamdulillah, and inshallah we'll see you next week. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. La ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.